I'm Lexi, and this is what you should know. So I'm quite stoked. So last week I released my 10th episode, and that to me is absolutely wild. Like, I can't believe I've managed to release 10 episodes. This is going to be my 11th, and I'm going to give you guys a heads up. It is a two-parter. But 10 episodes. And thanks to Spreaker, which is where I put my podcast through, I've actually been able to see my stats so clearly, and I have to say it is absolutely wild. Like, of course, being an Australian, releasing an Australian-based podcast regarding Australia, a majority of my podcast listeners are Australian. Who'da thunk it? That being said, the highest rated area for listening to me is not even in an area I live in. What is up, Canberra and Sydney? Hi! Wow, I did not expect you guys to be the biggest listeners, but here you are. And then to add on top of that, the fact that I've managed to go to some degree of global. Is it hugely global? No. But the fact is, my top rated areas for listening outside of Australia is like the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada. Heck, there's even been places like Malta and Russia. It is beyond me. Like, these people are just listening. People in Germany even. Hello. From my tiny little bedroom. Hello. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so gushy, but I can't help it. I'm just excited. That being said, if you could give me like a review, preferably a positive one, on iTunes, or 5 stars or 4 or whatever you feel I deserve on Spotify, give me a thumbs up on YouTube, it would mean more than anything to me than you could ever imagine. That being said, it's my birth month, yo. That's right, I'm born in April. To be specific, April the 27th. There's another bit of information you have. That being said, a lot tends to happen in April, including the case I'm going to be talking about. This year marks the 26th anniversary of the horrific Port Arthur Massacre. I would like to cover this topic, not just to put forward what facts currently are, but also to take time for us to solemnly reflect on what happened. We consider Australia to be a lucky country, and that we definitely are, but even this lucky country can't slip by without being marred by modern violence. Now, I want to do this properly, not to just cover the events of the day or the impact it had, but to also shed light on the lunatic who pulled the trigger. And that is where I will start. This is what you should know about Martin Bryant. There is a debate that goes on between whether or not murderers are born or created. And much like any debate that relates to an individual, it does depend on that individual. In the case of Martin, his history is heavily littered with examples of him being born a monster. Had this happened before 1985, there is no doubt in my mind that Martin Bryant would have been sentenced to death. However, in Australia, it was discontinued in 1985, and in 2010, legislation was passed prohibiting the reintroduction of capital punishment. I personally sit in a grey zone with capital punishment. I don't think it's necessarily the best option. However, in certain situations, especially like with this one, I feel as though it should still be an option. Martin Bryant was born to Maurice and Carleen Bryant on May the 7th of 1967. Growing up, it was apparent to his parents he had behavioural issues. At 16 months, he would run away from his mother, making it really difficult for her to parent him, and leaving her consistently frustrated. Carleen later said that he seemed incapable of showing emotion and did not believe that he was able to love, or at the very least, love her. During his school years, he would be violent and disruptive. It was commonly noted that he seemed to take great pleasure in making people uncomfortable. While swimming with a friend, he snatched off the snorkel that he was wearing while underwater, causing him to nearly drown. At one point, he randomly cut down trees in his neighbour's property. In 1977, Martin was suspended from school, and was then made to attend a special school. Unfortunately, this did nothing to improve his behavior or his studies. During his time at this school, he was allegedly found to have an IQ of 66, and it was also believed that he was autistic. At the age of 14, Martin's father gave him an airsoft rifle for his birthday, and he would then use it to shoot at traffic from a distance. And trigger warning, so maybe skip the next 15 seconds. It was also reported that he used the airsoft rifle to shoot a parrot out of a tree, which he then approached laughing and proceeded to shoot it a further 6 times in the head. Now, I am not a parent, but I really do not feel an airsoft rifle is a great idea for a young teen who has been showing red flags of such violent behavior. But as I said, I am not a parent. Throughout his childhood, he also took great pleasure in tormenting his little sister Lindy, who is 6 years his junior. However, I couldn't find a lot of information on that subject as she has pushed to keep her privacy, and honestly, I do not want to push that boundary. She deserves her privacy and the ability to be able to distance herself from a toxic relative. In 1983, Martin left school and was assessed for the disability pension. What the assessor wrote was quite disconcerting. Cannot read or write, does a bit of gardening, and watches TV. Only his parents' efforts prevent further deterioration. Could be schizophrenic, and parents face a bleak future with him. No one believed that Martin would ever be able to hold down a job. And that briefly covers the first 16 years of Martin's life. And oh boy, I am not lying when I say it's all downhill from here. Starting out by helping his father, Martin started work as a casual handyman doing odd jobs. This led him to meet Helen Harvey and started working for her in early 1987. Helen was the heiress to a share of the Tattersalls lottery and was worth a lot of money. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a figure for her net worth at that time, but I did find that there was a belief that the heirs to the Tattersalls lottery were considered to be cursed. Helen lived with her elderly mother in a mansion where they were considered to be quite reclusive. They had a large number of animals on their property, 14 dogs and 40 cats. To me, that's just too many pets. I mean, I found it overwhelming to have 3 cats at one point. But 40. I cannot fathom that at all. Like, I love cats, but could you imagine the smell? Both Helen and her mother were hoarders, so it wasn't a surprise when someone reported them to the health authority in 1990. Which, just saying, that was the year I was born. When the medics attended the mansion, they found both women in need of urgent medical care. Unfortunately, Helen's mother passed away shortly after. She was 79. This led to a large cleanup being ordered. Martin and his father attended, starting the long process of cleaning the mansion out. Maurice ended up taking long service leave to help Martin out with this, as it took literal months. During this time, Helen asked Martin if he would like to move in with her. Keep in mind, Helen was 57 at the time of asking, and Martin was 23. I would also like to take the time to point out that this was in no way a sexual or romantic relationship. It was, however, a close friendship. Martin described Helen as his only real friend. After he moved in with her, they would go out and Helen would spend large amounts of money, which included the purchase of 30 new cars in 3 years. The pair would spend their days going shopping and having lunch at restaurants. So she was dropping cash like it was going out of style, and Martin enjoyed this lavish lifestyle. It was during this time that Martin was reassessed for his disability pension, and on the paperwork attached stated the following: Father protects him from any occasion that might upset him, as he continually threatens violence. Martin tells me he would like to go around shooting people. It would be unsafe to allow Martin out of his parents' control. However, Martin continued to live with Helen. Helen was no longer allowed to have animals in her mansion, so she and Martin moved to a 29-hectare farm. Neighbours recalled always seeing Martin with his airsoft rifle, who would often fire it at tourists trying to buy apples, and late at night he would wander around other people's properties and shoot at dogs that would bark at him. These dogs would later avoid him at all costs, even during the day when he would try to befriend them and bribe them with treats. Which, honestly, I cannot fault the dogs for steering clear. The random cruelty of shooting at them with an airsoft rifle is just not on. On the 2nd of October 1992, there was a car accident that claimed Helen's life. She was driving, and Martin was sitting in the front passenger seat when he did what he had done so many times before. He reached across and playfully grabbed the steering wheel, causing her to veer off onto the wrong side of the road, causing a head-on collision. Martin was hospitalized with serious injuries to his neck and back. Initially, the police did their due diligence, and he was looked into as the cause of Helen's death, as it had gotten back to the police that Martin had the habit of grabbing the steering wheel while in the car. Neighbours had seen Helen's car veer erratically at random all over the road, and Helen had even confided in one of her neighbours that Martin was the reason she wouldn't drive faster than 60 kilometers per hour, and that he would be the death of her. That being said, Helen had listed Martin as the sole beneficiary of her estate, which totaled to more than $550,000. With inflation, that would be $1,073,135.93 today. Due to his disabilities, his mother applied for and was granted a guardianship order, which put these assets under the management of the public trustees, which basically means the government was taking care of his money due to his intellectual disability. Once Martin was released from the hospital, he was required to move back in with his parents. After Helen's death, Maurice started taking care of the farm. It was also around this time that he was prescribed antidepressants and discreetly transferred all of his joint accounts to his wife. On the 14th of August, 1993, a visitor went to the farm looking for Maurice and found a note pinned to the door saying, "Call the police," and several $1,000s in his car. The police were called, and upon arrival they declared there was no reason to suspect any criminal intent, and they searched the property. It took 2 days, but they eventually found the body of Maurice in the dam closest to the farmhouse with a diving belt around his neck. The police said that while the death was unnatural, it was ruled a suicide. Martin inherited the proceeds of his father's superannuation, totaling $250,000. Which today would be $487,789.06. And then shortly after, sold the farm for $143,000, which in today's money would be $279,015.34. Martin, however, kept the mansion that he had inherited from Helen. It is believed that Martin blamed his father's suicide on an older married couple named David and Sally Martin, as they had purchased a bed and breakfast known as the Seascape that Maurice had been setting up to buy. Maurice had complained to Martin on numerous occasions about the damage done to the Bryant family because of it. So before we jump too much further down the timeline into what Martin did leading up to the massacre, I want to talk about what he may have done. To clarify, Helen's death was deemed an accident and Maurice was clarified as a suicide. However, the theory is that Martin may have murdered them both. So let's look at them individually. Looking at the points from Helen's death being an accident, Martin is recorded as being developmentally delayed, allegedly having an IQ of 66. As an adult, it was claimed that he had the maturity of an 11-year-old, and according to Martin, Helen was his only friend. And then on top of that, you consider the fact that he did in fact have the history of grabbing the steering wheel as a joke. My favourite point for this, which I feel is the strongest point to say that this was honestly a horrible accident caused by someone who did not get the help that they actually needed, is that Martin was also in the car, putting too much risk for just Helen dying. There's no self-preservation in that. If he was actually just a sociopath, looking to kill off the heiress so he could get the money, why would he put himself at risk? Now, the points for Martin having murdered Helen, I feel are a bit of a stretch, but looking through it all, this is what the general consensus comes down to. Martin knew that Helen had put him in her will. He would have been told multiple times by Helen not to grab the steering wheel. which even if he did it as a joke, you would think, even if it was, say, an 11-year-old, because we're going with the idea that that's where his maturity level is, that they would eventually get the idea that you're not meant to do that. And the main theory is that Martin is a lot smarter than he is listed, and uses his disability to his advantage for getting away with murder. It makes for a great plot in a novel, but let's not give him more credit than he deserves. As for Maurice, the points for him committing suicide are as follows. Maurice had changed the joint names all to be in his wife's name, so that way she would have full reign over them. While it doesn't exclusively go hand in hand, he had been prescribed antidepressants and was obviously struggling with his mental health. The line in Martin's assessment stated that his parents would have a bleak future with him, as he had been spending a lot of time trying to help his son. What is to say that the weight of this wasn't too much for him? Maurice may have felt parental guilt over Helen's death. Sure, he wasn't the one that pulled on the steering wheel, but what's not to say that he doesn't feel responsible because he failed as a parent in his own mind? As I said, I'm not a parent, but I imagine that's not a level of guilt that just goes away. And finally, Martin seemed extremely close with his father and held the fact that the seascape wasn't purchased by his father as a reason that he had died. Now, the points for Maurice being murdered by Martin, again, I feel a bit like it's a stretch. Maurice allegedly had been named the trustee over Martin's inheritance from Helen's estate, so he wouldn't have unbridled access to his money if he was still alive. Martin then also found out that he would inherit $250,000 in the event of Maurice's death. Fair enough, it's valid points to murder someone people have killed for a lot less money. But we're talking about a man-child. He has the IQ of 66. However, Martin was on the site when the police found Maurice's body and did not seem upset at all, and spent his time cracking jokes with the male officers and then asking out the female officers. The diving belt around Maurice's neck belonged to Martin. While I cannot speak for the deceased, drowning is the least popular method for suicide, but as it is a deeply personal choice, safe to say if it was all murder, the motive is going to be very clearly money. After both deaths, Martin changed his clothing style. He changed out his overalls for eccentric suits and would carry a briefcase around with him, telling anyone that would listen to him that he is a businessman, but never specifying what field he was allegedly in. He is quite sad, and it was even said by the owner of the restaurant that Martin continued to frequent. He has been quoted as saying, "It was horrible. Everyone was laughing at him, even the other customers. I suddenly felt quite sad for him. I realized he didn't really have any friends." Martin became increasingly lonely, and he did try to seek psychiatric help and was prescribed antidepressants. We can only assume that this did not work, especially what did occur in 1996. In late 1993, it is recorded that Martin then started purchasing guns. He bought an AR-15, an L1A1 self-loading battle rifle, and a USAS-12 automatic shotgun. He then also purchased a large sports bag big enough to carry a large amount of ammunition and his guns. This was very methodical, as he actually measured the bag to ensure it was big enough. I don't even have that kind of devotion to checking to see if a bag will fit all of my clothes when I go traveling. Between the years of 1993 and 1995, with his inheritance, he travelled overseas a total of 14 times. It is said that Martin hated the places he travelled to because he found that, much like in Tasmania, people would avoid him. People did not like Martin. However, he did like flights when these poor people were forced to be next to him and were unable to just get up and leave when he would engage them in conversation. Some of the conversations he had with these passengers would be describing other successful conversations he'd had on other flights. It was late 1995 when Martin became suicidal, saying he'd had enough. His words were, "I just felt more people were against me. When I tried to be friendly towards them, they just walked away." I get a little stuck on feeling here. On one hand, I feel bad for the Martin of 1995. He would have felt misunderstood and alone, and it really does suck to feel that way. But you cannot expect that being friendly towards people will grant you friendship, and there is a high possibility that your version of friendly could be creepy and could make people feel so uncomfortable. Despite this loneliness he claims and depression, during this time he started dating someone, a young girl named Mary. Martin was 27 at the time, and Mary was 16. Let that age gap sink in. Prior to finding this out, I figured that maybe the hurt that he felt from being rejected turned into an explosive anger rather than an imploding or more favorable gaining further assistance. However, he had a dating life during this time frame when he chose violence, so decisions were made. Mary was attracted to Martin as a person and thought he was quite attractive, and Martin was quite attractive at the time. He had long blonde hair, blue eyes, was quite fit and muscular. The relationship started during the time that Martin was allegedly planning the massacre, while descending into alcoholism, daily consuming half a bottle of Sambuca, a bottle of Bailey's, port wine, and various other sweet alcoholic drinks. Martin also claimed the plan for Port Arthur may have first occurred to him anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks earlier. So what was going on in that relationship with Mary, or was it simply too late for Martin at that time? According to Mary, on their first date, Martin had tried to seem smarter than he was, pretending to read the paper. She went along with it because she wanted him to feel good about himself. During this short relationship, Martin asked Mary to marry him. She was honest with him and said no, which is understandable, especially considering the fact that she was only 16, which effectively makes him pedophilic when you consider the actual terms here. Honestly, it's just enough to make my skin crawl. I'm so grossed out by it. I really am. Mary noticed what could have been red flags of what was to come. She had said Martin was obsessed with dolls, teddy bears, and violent horror films. He even showed Mary videos from Scandinavia featuring bestiality, and his favorite movie to the point of obsession was Child's Play 2. But with all of this, Mary believed at that point that Martin was a very nice man. But they did not stay together for too long, and soon parted ways. 2 months before the massacre, he began dating a shy horticulture student, Petra Wilmont. She described him as friendless and obsessed with finding excitement and violent videos. Martin would make her drive him to car crash scenes. Apparently, he found it to be interesting and fun in a way that even makes true crime junkies blush. Martin allegedly stated that he always looked for action and would get bored if he couldn't find it. 3 days before the massacre, he took Petra to historic Richmond on a date and asked the shopkeeper how busy the town was. And just like that, I'm gonna leave you on this juicy cliffhanger. Sorry, I know, I'm terrible. But even then, I say that, but this is a well-known case. If you really want to know, you can just look it up. Heck, it has been covered by so many podcasts. Like, I am a drop in a bucket. A drop in the ocean, even. But please do join me next week for the events of the day in question, where I shall then go into the impacts. As I said earlier, this should only be 2 parts. I really don't think this is going to be 3, but if it is 3, I will let you know next week. If you want to see some pictures regarding to the case, you can see them at What You Should Know Australia. You can also see it on Facebook under the same name. Follow for updates, pictures on the case, the occasional meme that I post. I do also post in the stories on Instagram missing people. And if you do happen to know any of those missing people, by all means, do everyone a favor. Reach out to Crime Stoppers. And if you really want to contact me, you can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, or if you feel so inclined, you can send me an email, whatyoushouldknowaustralia@gmail.com. Now, if you do feel so inclined, as I did beg you earlier, and let's not beat around the bush, that was me somewhat begging. And I say somewhat as if that's going to take out the sting of the fact that I was. If you feel so inclined, please give me 5 stars, a like, share, subscribe. Shiny 5 stars would make me so happy I might even cry. Consider it a birthday present. But until next week, my love, stay safe and stay hydrated. Bye!